Welcome to this session on the solution release. In this session, we're going to look at a number of different tracks that occur during the solution release timeframe. And those will include change management and release management, training, documentation, project control, testing, which includes load and stress testing, stabilization, and user acceptance testing. So let's go ahead and get started. When we look at the overall solution release phase, we've finally gotten to the point where after all of the sweat and blood and all the delivering of the iterations, we're ready for the last run to the go live date. So there's a bit more work to do, but at least the finish line is in sight. So the first track that we wish to talk about is change management and release management. The duration of the overall solution release stage may vary depending on the overall length of the project and the iteration development stage. The rule of thumb is that we usually have 1 week of solution release for every 5 weeks of iteration development. So here we can see there's some general feeling of 1 to 4 weeks. Now, the main thing in change and release management will be the rollout plan. And this includes a step-by-step technical deployment script for a seamless installation of the solution. And that means all configurations and bootstraps should be documented. Everything should be validated as far as the infrastructure and any third-party integrations that are necessary. So everything should be installed, configured, and the connectivity should have been tested as well. There also needs to be a rollback scenario. Although it rarely needs to be done, we should always prepare for a rollback in case something goes wrong, especially for mission-critical apps. And depending on the nature of the app, the impact that it may have on the operations team and how complex the existing and new versions of the solution are going to be can significantly affect the rollback alternatives. And we need to be very careful and consider these and plan for them in detail. For example, direct solutions may have some sort of version rollback, which includes some sort of database snapshot, which means we may have to restore or publish different hot fixes to go ahead and make sure that the data and the code actually stay in sync. So we don't want to have any data loss, and we don't want any external systems to be out of sync because of the deployment. So that rollback needs to take that into account. In essence, the rollout plan should include a complete path to switch from the former app to the new app, not only from a technical standpoint, but also from the operational standpoint. And that means that we have to completely understand the business impact of the solution and make sure that the individuals, the teams, and the organizations know about the new processes and tools so that everyone will be able to pick up and adopt exactly what's going to be ready after the go live date. Ultimately, this rollout plan is ensuring the value that the business is looking for. And we need to guarantee that everyone is ready to be able to use the solution and to fulfill that value in that plan. The next thing, as far as tracks, would be training. So first of all, we're constantly working to make our solution as intuitive as possible, unlike my speech. And in this case, not every application will need a huge amount of training. If you need lots of training, you may want to think back and go, is the user experience really as good as it could be? Because if they need a lot of training, then maybe it's not as intuitive as we would like, or some part of it is still too complex. Some applications and some solutions just will have complicated types of pieces inside of them, and that may require training. The training normally will be done by a business analyst or a subject matter expert slash key user or champion. And sometimes that actually just consists of a train the trainer, where the subject matter expert trains someone who can then become the person to train the rest of the business. And depending on the type of application and the type of technical work that's being done, sometimes that can be recorded as a video for easier distribution if there are a high number of distributed end users. Beyond training, then there's documentation. We should produce a last version of technical documentation for the solution. Now there is OutDoc, which can be downloaded from the Forge, and this is where OutSystems provides an automated way to generate some documentation out of the project in Service Studio. Now we need to ensure that the proper project handover to both IT and business occurs, and that all of the relevant technical and functional aspects of the application are fully documented and passed on in some digital format. And that could be design documents, user guides, or the OutDoc information. Once the training and documentation is done, we then need to look at project control. We'll be finalizing any last work items and making sure that the solution release is going to address all of the feedback that has been given from both the users and the different types of business tests where we've done user acceptance testing. So there is a risk that if we focus on all of the other pieces of this, that we may not have all of the quality as far as the documentation and control that we're looking for. So one thing that can be a major task at this point is actually doing different types of data migrations. There may be some unforeseen factors making sure that all of the different data is completely right. And at this point, when the project is trying to determine if there are any issues going up to the go live date, they will have to have some meetings and make the final decision of a go or no go. So that project control needs to get to the point where all issues are understood so that decision can be made. From a testing standpoint, now the full solution is available. So we should perform lots of end-to-end testing with the business and making sure the users are getting the value and the users' needs are being met by the application. So there'll be a number of scheduled sessions to do all of the user acceptance testing, and then there'll be other types of testing put on top of this. And that would include things like load and stress testing. So these would normally be performed by the development team or experts, because this requires building different test scripts and then executing multiple scenarios with lots of real type of data to get some sort of report on how all of these different tests will go. We want to make sure that the application is strong enough to handle large amounts of load and still be able to respond in a timely fashion. And then finally, there's stabilization and the user acceptance testing that we mentioned a little bit earlier. Here we need to get the key users, the business analysts, and the testers to go ahead and go through the different types of tests and provide final acceptance for the functionality that's been delivered. They could still reject things depending on the types of findings and what they may be finding, but there would be a regular release cycle every other day to go ahead and attempt to prepare hot fixes and get as many of these user stories accepted as possible. Now, the tech lead should not forget that they need to be working on all of the different hotfixes and making sure they get into the different environments that are going to be used for user acceptance testing. This week or set of weeks can be very intense because the go live date is coming quickly and there needs to be a lot of communication between many different roles here, all in a very short period of time. So as this gets more and more intense and we're constantly looking for that project control piece in the middle, which will be the go or no go criteria, there will be a lot of different decisions and discussions that may need to be had. Ultimately, the decision will be made by the stakeholders, and the stakeholder will be able to make that decision as soon as they can have all the information about the different types of testing that is done and the feedback that is coming. But after this, we actually get to the far right-hand side where we'll be going live. So finally, after solution release, part of this phase is to go live, and that will actually be the support of the rollout of the execution. And at that point, the IT team and the business will have the new application in production, so everything will be ready for success and for them to continue using it. So there has been a lot of different discussions on all the tracks that will be necessary to create a successful solution release. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.